It took 90 seconds for a quiet cafe in Koreatown to become a war zone. 30 killers, one target, and every single person who could run did. Every person except one, a waitress, in a black apron holding nothing but a needle. Her name was Christina Wells, and in the time it takes to brew an espresso, she would teach every assassin in that room a lethal new meaning for the term pressure point. 27 more to go. Let's freeze this moment, right here, because nothing about this picture makes sense. On one side, a wall of professional violence, men trained to end lives efficiently. Their target? Park Hai Jong, the untouchable king of LA's most powerful Korean syndicate, a man who should have had layers of security, but in this sacred neutral ground, he had only his coffee and her. On the other side, a waitress. 6 months ago, she was serving him that same coffee, black, no sugar. Now, she stands as his only shield, and the look on his face, it isn't fear, it's recognition. Stark, shocking recognition, as if the woman he's been tipping $100 a day just tore off a mask he never knew she was wearing. The first assassin learned the truth the hard way. He never saw the needle coming. Christina didn't throw it. She didn't need to. She stepped into his charge, a fluid movement more like a dancer than a fighter, and placed it, a single, precise insertion between the third and fourth cervical vertebrae. Surgical, instant, silent. He dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. The formation broke, confusion ripped through the attackers, their perfect assault shattered in a heartbeat by a tool you'd find in a wellness spa. But this was no wellness treatment, this was a statement. Christina Wells didn't get into a fighting stance, she simply turned her head, her gaze locking on to the next closest threat. Her expression was calm, clinical. The same look she'd probably used 1,000 times assessing a critical patient in the ER. She was reading them, diagnosing their weakest points. And in that suspended, breathless second, a terrifying rumor whispered through the room, a rumor that would become legend in the underworld by morning. Park's waitress isn't a civilian. She's his secret weapon, and she knows how to unmake a man from the inside out. The chaos hadn't even truly begun, but the balance of power had already irrevocably shifted, because the most dangerous person in the room wasn't the crime lord, and it wasn't the 30 armed men. It was the woman in the apron, whose hands were meant for healing, but in that moment held only the promise of a very specific and very final kind of peace. But how does a waitress become the most dangerous person in the room? To understand that, you have to rewind to the moment her old life ended, not with a bang, but with a text message that broke her heart.
6 months before the war in the cafe, Christina Wells believed in signs. Her grandmother, a root worker from Louisiana with eyes that saw storms before clouds formed, taught her that. She said the world whispers to those who know how to listen. A chill down your spine isn't just a chill, it's a pivot point. And on the night of her anniversary dinner, sitting alone at a table set for 2, Christina's spine turned to ice. She'd worn a dress, the one Marcus said made her look like a queen. She'd arrived on time, heart full of a fragile hope. He'd chosen the restaurant, expensive, white tablecloth, the kind of place where you make promises you're supposed to keep. 43 minutes. That's how long she sat, the hum of other people's celebrations, a cruel soundtrack. The server's pitying looks became unbearable. Finally, she checked her phone. One text. No call, no explanation. Can't do this anymore. You're too intense, too much. I need normal. The words weren't just a rejection, they were an erasure. Too intense was code. Code for the way she filled a room without trying. Code for her uncompromising mind, the one that had just gotten her blacklisted from the hospital for filing one too many complaints about patient safety. Code for a height and a presence and a truth-telling gaze that made small men feel small. Marcus hadn't seen her strength. He'd seen a threat. She left the restaurant with her head high,
the cracks in her heart spreading with every click of her stiletto heels on the pavement. She walked 12 blocks in those stupid, beautiful shoes, not even knowing where she was going, until she saw the soft glow of a sign, Night and Dale Café. It was a tiny pocket of warmth in the vast, uncaring city, a Korean-owned spot that never seemed to close. The owner, an older woman named Mrs. Lim, took one look at Christina's shattered composure, at the dress too fine for the vinyl booths, and without a word poured 2 glasses of expensive soju. "Men are trash," Mrs. Lim said, her accent thick but her meaning crystal clear. She slid into the booth like they were old friends. "But you are not broken. You are too strong for weak man." The kindness almost broke her. The dam cracked. "I'm unemployed," Christina confessed, the soju a welcome burn. "I quit nursing because they were cutting corners and people were dying. I spoke up. Now I have no job, no man, and apparently I'm too much to love." Mrs. Lim's eyes, sharp and knowing, scanned her face. "You were trauma nurse, 5 years. You see things others miss. You understand pressure and points of failure." There was a weight to her words. "I need Waitress, someone smart, someone who sees. You want job?" Every rational bone in Christina's body screamed no. Go home, update the resume, get another hospital job. But her grandmother's voice whispered, "When you stand at a pivot, baby, you have to choose the direction that feels like truth." "Yes," Christina heard herself say. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow, 6 a.m." Mrs. Lim leaned forward, her voice dropping. "This neighborhood, this cafe, we see things here, dangerous things. You be careful, but also you be ready." A long, assessing pause. "I think you are a woman who can handle danger." At the time, Christina thought she meant drunk customers or a late-night thief. She had no idea she was being ushered to the edge of a hidden world, a world where a waitress's sharp eyes could be a more valuable weapon than any gun, a world where very soon a king would walk in and see not a heartbroken woman, but a dormant queen. Before we step into that cafe with her, I need to pause and say a quick thank you. This deep dive into hidden power and secret identities is what we love to create for you. If you love getting lost in these cinematic stories, consider supporting us by subscribing to Smooth. It's the best way to ensure we can keep bringing you these fully realized, high-production stories that go beyond the surface drama. It truly makes all the difference. Now, back to the story. Because Christina's first shift was quiet, her second was uneventful, but on her third day, the energy in the Nightingale Café shifted, the air grew still, and a man with a dragon coiled around his neck walked in, changing everything. The Nightingale Café, Christina quickly learned, operated on 2 levels. On the surface, the smell of roasting coffee, the steam from barley tea, the gentle clink of cups. Beneath that surface, a silent, humming current of unspoken rules and watchful eyes. Her third day, 6:28 a.m. The morning regulars, a few elderly men, a shop owner opening early, fell silent mid-sentence. The gentle hum of the cafe was severed by the soft chime of the door. He entered not with a bang, but with a vacuum, as if all the sound in the room was sucked out to make space for him. Park Hai Jong, 28 years old, moving with a predator's economical grace, a black suit that looked like a second skin, tailored to perfection. But it wasn't the clothes that marked him, it was the ink, an intricate, breathtaking dragon that began behind his right ear, its serpentine body coiling down the column of his neck before disappearing beneath his crisp white collar. In the world he moved in, a neck tattoo wasn't decoration, it was a declaration, a billboard of rank and consequence. He didn't scan the room, he already knew it. His feet carried him directly to the corner table, the one with a flawless view of both entrances and the kitchen door, the throne. He sat and waited. Mrs. Lim appeared from the back, her usual warm gruffness replaced by a deep, formal bow. Words were exchanged in rapid, low Korean. His reply was a low murmur, like stone grinding against stone. Then his gaze lifted and landed on Christina. The weight of it was physical. This wasn't the look of a customer seeing a new waitress. This was an assessment, a calculation. "Coffee," he said. His English was perfect, unaccented. "Black, no sugar." A test. Everyone in the room was holding their breath, watching the new girl. Would she stammer? Would her hands shake? Christina had survived 5 years in LA trauma centers. She'd stood her ground against surgeons with God complexes and administrators who valued budgets over heartbeats. Fear was a luxury her ethics couldn't afford. She walked to his table, back straight, and poured the coffee with steady hands. She met his eyes, dark and unreadable. "Anything else?" Her voice was professional, clear, and carried not a trace of awe. Something flickered in his expression, not anger, surprise, a spark of interest. "No, thank you." He paused. "You're new." 3 days. You going to tell me the secret handshake, or do I have to guess?" For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth. The dragon on his neck seemed to shift. "No handshake. Just be observant. This cafe is special, protected. What happens here stays here." Understood, though she only understood half of it, though I'm more concerned with tips than drama. I tip well. He pulled a black leather wallet from his jacket and placed a single crisp $100 bill on the table for a $3 coffee. "For your discretion." She looked at the money, then back at him. Every instinct whispered that taking this was signing a contract she couldn't read, but the ghost of Marcus's text and her dwindling bank account screamed louder. Discretion purchased, though I don't even know what I'm being discreet about. "You will." His eyes held hers a beat too long. "You're not afraid of me." Should I be? Most people are. A small, defiant smile touched her lips. Most people haven't spent 5 years in LA Trauma Center. You'd need to be a lot scarier than you look. She turned to leave, then glanced back over her shoulder. Though the neck tattoo is a nice touch, very don't mess with me energy. This time the smile broke through, brief but genuine. "What's your name?" "Christina Wells. Yours?" "Park Hai Jong." He said it like it was a key that should unlock a door in her mind. When her expression remained blank, his smile widened just a fraction. "You really are new." "Brand new, but I'm a quick study." "I believe you." He lifted the coffee cup. "I'll come here every morning at 6:30. I'll want the same thing. Coffee, black, no sugar." He waited until she was almost at the counter. "And Christina." She turned. "Thank you," he said, his voice lower, "for treating me like a person." That night, she Googled him. The screen's blue light washed over her face in the dark of her tiny apartment. Articles about international trade conglomerates, philanthropic donations, and buried in forum threads and obscure crime blogs, the truth. Park Hai Jong, head of the Park family, a name synonymous with power, control, and whispered violence. She should have quit. She should have run. Instead, the next morning at 6:15, she was there. She brewed the coffee, sharp and strong. She carried it to his table, placed it down without a word. He nodded, left another $100 bill, and a dangerous, silent rhythm began. But this rhythm was a ticking clock, because in this world of shadows, calm never lasts. And soon, Christina's unique skills wouldn't just be observed, they would be demanded. The rhythm of the cafe became Christina's new life. Mornings belonged to him, Park Hai Jong's hour of solitary power, where he'd review documents, make tense calls in Korean, or just stare out the window as if solving a city-sized puzzle. Afternoons were for the local shop owners who treated Mrs. Lim like royalty. Evenings were when the shadows deepened. Men with cold eyes and concealed bulges under their jackets would occupy separate booths, speaking through intermediaries while Christina served tea, pretending not to notice the dangerous currents flowing between them. She was a spectator in a play where everyone knew their lines, except her. But her nursing instincts, the ones trained to spot a crashing patient's subtle tremors or the flicker of fear before pain hit, served her perfectly here. She learned to read the room's vital signs, the set of a shoulder, a too long pause, a nervous tap of a finger. She knew when to fade into the background and when to appear with a fresh pot of coffee and a disarming smile, subtly resetting the tension. He watched her. Always he watched. About 2 months into their silent dance, he broke the morning quiet. "You're wasted as a waitress." His voice was conversational, but his eyes were analyzing her. "You read people better than half my intelligence operatives." Christina didn't pause in refilling his cup. "Maybe I'm a spy." "If you were," he said, the statement flat and factual, "you'd be dead by now." He set down his pen. "I had you investigated after your first week. Former trauma nurse. Exemplary record until you filed 17 complaints about patient care protocols. Blacklisted for being a problem." He looked up, his gaze pinning her. "You chose ethics over career. That's rare." A cold prickle traced her spine, the warning tingle. "You investigated me?" "I investigate everyone who gets close. It's not personal, it's survival." From his briefcase, he slid out a single sheet of paper. "I also know you have a master's in traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, meridian theory, pressure points. Your grandmother was a healer, and you wanted the science behind her magic. The invasion should have felt violent. Instead, it felt seen." "What's your point?" "My organization needs a medical consultant, someone who understands both the body's mechanics and its hidden switches, someone discreet, observant, and unafraid of blood." He leaned forward slightly. "You'd make 10 times what you make here. You'd have resources, protection, a purpose that doesn't involve cleaning tables." A bitter laugh escaped her. "You want me to be your mob doctor?" "I want you to stop pretending," he said, his voice dropping. "You're serving coffee because a broken system punished you for being competent and moral. I'm offering you a world where your competence isn't just valued, it's vital." She walked away without answering, but his words were seeds, and they took root in the fertile soil of her frustration. The shift happened on a rainy Tuesday closing shift. Mrs. Lim was gone. 3 men walked in 5 minutes before lockup. Not customers, predators. Their leader, a white man with prison ink crawling up his neck, grabbed her wrist when she turned away. "We didn't dismiss you, girl. Sit. We want to talk about your boss." Christina went very still. She looked at his hand, then at his eyes. "You have 3 seconds to let go before you lose the ability to use that hand." He laughed, squeezing tighter. "You threatening me?" "Warning you." Before his laugh faded, her free hand darted into her apron pocket. In a motion too fast to follow, she pressed a single acupuncture needle into the Haegu point on the back of his hand. His grip vanished. His fingers splayed open in a spasm of shock and pain. "What the hell?" "Large intestine 4, she said, her voice clinically calm. "Governs hand function. The needle is in about 3 millimeters. Move too much and you might lose motor control for a week, so I suggest you sit very, very still." The cafe door chimed. Park Hai Jong stood there, taking in the scene, the 3 intruders, Christina standing over them with detached calm, the needle glinting in the man's hand. His expression didn't erupt into anger, it settled into something far more dangerous, pure, lethal intent. What happened next was less a fight and more a demonstration. Park moved with a terrifying, efficient grace. In under a minute, all 3 men were on the ground, groaning but conscious. He made a call, then his attention returned to Christina. "Remove the needle." She did, her movements professional, as if in a clinic. The leader clutched his hand, whimpering. When his men arrived and removed the trespassers, Park Hai Jong was left alone with Christina. He looked at her not with shock, but with a profound, reassessing respect. "Where did you learn that?" "I told you, I studied pressure points." "You used a healing art as a weapon." "I used knowledge to enforce a boundary," she corrected. "There's a difference." He studied her for a long, silent moment, and the air between them crackled with a new understanding. "You're not what I expected," he finally said. "Most people underestimate the angry black girl with a nursing degree, their mistake." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I'm not most people," he said. Stepping closer, the space between them hummed with a new understanding. "That's why I want you in my world, not as a decoration, not as a symbol, as the most dangerous person in any room." His voice was barely a whisper. "You're a weapon pretending to be a waitress, Christina, and we both know it. The only question is, how long will you keep up the act?" She wanted to deny it, to cling to the simple story of a woman rebuilding her life, but in his eyes she saw no condescension, no fear of her intensity, only a stark reflection of her own buried power. He didn't want to dim her light, he wanted to aim it. "I'll think about it," she whispered, the words feeling both a surrender and a claim. "Fair enough," he handed her, a plain black business card with a single phone number. "My private line. If you need anything, safety, resources, an exit from any situation, you call, day or night." Their fingers brushed as she took it. The spine tingle returned. Warning or promise, she could no longer tell. He left, and as she locked the café, her hands weren't shaking from fear. It was the adrenaline of a truth finally acknowledged. A line had been crossed, and the most terrifying part? She didn't want to go back. But this new path wasn't a choice between serving coffee or being a consultant. It was a doorway into a war, and very soon, the war would decide to come knocking on her door, not his.
The ambush that changed everything. For 3 months, Christina lived in the in-between. By day, the waitress's apron. By night, a shadow consultant. Encrypted texts would light up her phone. Meeting with the Jin family. What's the physiological tell for a liar under beta blockers? Late-night calls. If a man is stabbed here but bleeds out from here, which wound killed him? She was a ghost in Park Hai Jong's machine, her medical knowledge becoming a key that turned the tumblers of his dangerous world. He paid her in thick, unmarked envelopes, more money than she'd ever seen. And with every exchange, the professional distance between them thinned, strained by a current of something electric and unspoken. Then, the night before New Year's Eve, the in-between shattered. She was walking home, the familiar streets of Koreatown quiet. That's when she felt it, the primal warning her grandmother called the whisper, a chill that started at the base of her skull and shot down her spine. She was being followed. She didn't run, she slowed, assessed. 3 men, expensive suits, but their movement was all military efficiency, professionals. They weren't hiding anymore. Christina Wells. The voice was American, smooth with a southern drawl that didn't match the dead eyes. Park Hai Jong's pet. "We've been looking for you." She turned, letting her posture soften, playing the part they expected. "I think you're confused. I just serve coffee." "We're not confused," the leader smiled, a cold slit in his face. "You're the waitress who sees things, the one with the magic needles. You're going to come with us. You're going to tell us everything about your boss's schedules, his security, his soft spots." The smile vanished. "And if you don't, well, there are other ways to make people talk." Her hand was already in her coat pocket, fingers finding the slim metal case. "And if I say no?" "Then we hurt you," he said simply, "until you say yes." Wrong answer. She moved not like a fighter, but like a clinician responding to a code blue with swift, devastating purpose. The first needle found the carotid sinus, a precise tap, not to kill, but to drop his blood pressure so fast his brain screamed danger. He gasped, knees buckling. The second man lunged. She sidestepped, driving a needle deep into the brachial plexus nerve cluster. A full, deadening numbness instantly seized his right arm. The third finally cleared his weapon, but Christina was already inside his guard. One hand trapped the gun wrist, the other planted a needle into the radial nerve. The gun clattered to the pavement. Breathing hard, she stepped back. 3 needles, 3 men incapacitated. Her phone was in her hand, the number she'd memorized but never used already dialing. He answered on the first ring. "Christina." 3 men, 2 blocks from the café. I stopped them. They knew about me. They called me your intel asset. Her voice was shockingly steady. He heard his sharp intake of breath, then rapid, harsh Korean in the background. Engines roared to life. "Don't move. I'm 3 minutes away. Are you hurt?" "No." The adrenaline was beginning to recede, leaving a hollow tremor. "Park, they were waiting for me." "This is my fault." The raw guilt in his voice was new. "I made you a target. Stay on the line."
He arrived in a convoy of black SUVs, spilling out with a team that moved like a single organism. While they secured the attackers, he was on her, his hands gripping her shoulders, his eyes scouring her for any sign of injury. "Look at me. Are you sure you're okay?" "I'm fine." But she wasn't. The facade was cracking. "Why is a rival gang targeting your waitress?" "Because you're not just my waitress anymore." The words burst from him, fierce and frustrated. "You're—" Stopped, his jaw clenched, struggling for control. "Important to me. And people have noticed." The air between them went still. "Important how?" she whispered. "Important enough that I don't sleep if I don't know you're safe. Important enough that seeing you in danger makes me want to burn this entire city to the ground." He released her, stepping back as if the confession had scalded him. "I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. You're an employee, not what?" She closed the distance he'd created, her own fear morphing into a defiant clarity. "Say it, Hai Jong." His gaze was a storm. "Not just a consultant, not just a friend. You're more. You have been since you put that needle in that bastard's hand and didn't even blink." His voice dropped, rough with emotion. "You walked into my world without fear and made me remember what it feels like to want something beyond power and control." Christina felt the world tilt. "My last boyfriend left me because I was too much, and here you are, the most powerful criminal in LA, telling me I'm not enough. I'm everything." "It's insane," he admitted, his hand coming up to cradle her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin. "But I gave up on sane a long time ago. The only question is, are you brave enough to be insane with me?" Before she could answer, his head snapped up at a call from his men. The vulnerability vanished, sealed away behind the mask of the commander. "We have to move. Now." This was coordinated. "More will come." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe. My home. You're staying with me until this is over." "I can't just—" "You can and you will." His eyes held absolute certainty. "Christina, I won't let anyone hurt you because of me. You're under my protection now. Full stop." He didn't give her a choice, and the terrifying, exhilarating truth was she was already in too deep to ever walk away. His home was a penthouse fortress, all cold marble and bulletproof glass. It felt like a museum of survival, not a place to live. "This is where you work, not where you live." "I haven't had a home in a long time," he said simply, removing his jacket to reveal the shoulder holster beneath. "The guest suite is there. It's yours. My room is on the other side. This is just about safety. Nothing happens unless you want it to." The unspoken offer hung in the sterile air. She thought of Marcus, who found her too much. She thought of the hospital, which found her too loud. She looked at Park Hai Jong, who found her magnificent. "And if I do want more?" she asked, her voice quiet in the vast space. He crossed to her, stopping just shy of touch. "Then I'd tell you I've imagined this 1,000 times." His gaze dropped to her lips. "But I'd also tell you that loving me means a target on your back. It means nights like this, constant danger. I'm asking you to risk everything for a man who might not survive the year." "You're really selling it," she whispered, a faint smile touching her lips. "I'm being honest because you deserve nothing less." He finally touched her, tucking a curl behind her ear, his fingers lingering. "Think about it. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. I have to end this war. After that, we decide what comes next." He left her standing there, surrounded by luxury and locked doors, her heart pounding not from fear of the attackers, but from the terrifying, exhilarating realization she was already in too deep to ever walk away. And tomorrow, the war would come to a head not in some back alley, but in the only place that was supposed to be sacred, the café where it all began.
New Year's Eve dawned with a deceptive calm. In the penthouse, Park Hai Jong made breakfast, slightly burned Korean pancakes, a clumsy, human act that somehow felt more intimate than any confession. But the shadow in his eyes was back. The clock was ticking. "The meeting is tonight," he said, his voice all business now.
With the Lee family, the same ones who sent those men after you, we're negotiating terms to avoid an all-out war. At the café? Christina asked, her blood running cold. Neutral ground, Mrs. Lim's territory. It's the only place they'll agree to. He saw the protest forming on her lips. You're staying here. Full security. You'll be safe. And you? Will you be safe? He didn't lie. Probably not. But if there's a chance to stop the bloodshed, I have to take it. Then she said the words that changed the trajectory of the night. I'm coming with you. The argument was fierce, but her logic was a weapon he couldn't disarm. You value my ability to read people, to spot lies. How many traps have I helped you avoid? Every single one. If this goes wrong, you'll need someone watching your back who isn't thinking about territory or power, someone who just wants you to survive. She reached for his hand, and the connection was electric. Let me do this. Why? The question was raw, stripped bare. Why risk yourself for my war? Her answer was the final crumbling wall. Because somewhere between terrible coffee and acupuncture needles, I started falling for you. Because you see me, and I can't watch you walk into that room alone. The look he gave her then was a vow and a surrender. If I let you come, you follow my orders. If I say run, you run. Understood. And, Christina, he added, his voice a low promise, when this is over, we're having a very different conversation. Night and Dial Café at 9 p.m. was a pressure cooker dressed in quiet. Park's security, 8 men, lined the walls. The Lee family brought 10. Mrs. Lim moved behind the counter, her face a mask of stoic grace, pouring tea herself, a sacred gesture of neutrality. Lee Ji-hoon, the silver-haired head of the family, offered a smile that didn't touch his eyes. You bring your pet to negotiations, he asked, glancing at Christina. I bring my consultant. Park's voice could have frozen hell. Show respect or this ends now. Christina took her position, the silent observer, but her eyes were everywhere. She catalogued the Lee foot soldiers, their stances, their micro-expressions. Her gaze snagged on the young one, barely 20, positioned behind Lee's left shoulder. His hand kept drifting to his jacket pocket, a nervous, repetitive tap. Not a gun holster, something else. Her spine ignited with the warning tingle. The negotiation was a dance of blades. Lee offered a partnership, a 70-30 split in his favor, a polite annihilation. As Park countered, Christina leaned in, her whisper a ghost in his ear. The young one, left side. He's armed but not with a gun. He keeps checking his pocket. He's terrified. I think it's a detonator. Park didn't flinch. He asked for a moment to consider, standing as if to retreat to the kitchen. That's when the young operative's hand jerked into his pocket. Christina didn't shout, "Gun!" She screamed, "Down! Now!" Chaos. The operative wasn't drawing a weapon. He was raising a small black device, thumb poised over a button. Christina saw the tiny hidden wires along the cafe's moldings. The entire building was wired to blow. 3 seconds, that's all she had. She didn't think, she moved, past Park, past his guards, a direct line to the operative. He saw a waitress charging and smirked, not bothering to raise a defense. Fatal mistake. Her longest needle was already in her hand. With a clinical, devastating thrust, she drove it into the precise nerve cluster of his wrist. His fingers spasmed open. The detonator tumbled free. Christina snatched it from the air before it hit the ground. She stood in the center of the frozen room, her thumb hovering over the glowing red button. Anyone moves, she announced, her voice ringing with a terrifying calm, and this whole building becomes a crater. The silence was absolute. Lee Ji-hoon's face was purple with rage. You stupid girl. That stupid girl just saved your life, Park snarled, his own weapon now aimed at Lee's head. You brought explosives to neutral ground. You violated every code we have. Proof you're weak, Lee spat. You hide behind a woman. I stand beside a woman who just stopped your cowardly massacre, Park corrected. The standoff was total, 20 guns drawn and one woman holding a city block's worth of C4 in her hand. "Lower your weapons," Christina commanded. "All of you. I'm going to disarm this. Then you two are going to talk about the consequences. And if anyone does anything stupid, my next needle goes into a point that causes permanent paralysis. We clear?" It was Mrs. Lim's voice, sharp as shattered glass, that broke the stalemate. "She is right. You bring death to my home, to my café? Unacceptable." She pointed a trembling finger. "You will negotiate peace, or you will leave and never return. This is my word." Her authority, ancient and moral, forced the tension to break. Guns were slowly lowered. With steady hands, Christina disarmed the device. The light blinked from red to green. Park Hai Jong looked at Lee Ji-hoon and delivered not a sentence of death, but a sentence of legacy's end. "You will pay $2 million in reparations. You will withdraw from all disputed territories. And you, Lee Ji-hoon, will retire. Tonight. Because if I see you again, the old rules won't apply." It was a mercy that shamed more than any violence could. Defeated, the Lee family retreated. When the door chimed shut on the last of them, the strength left Christina's legs. Park caught her, holding her up as she trembled. "It's over," he murmured in her hair. "You did it. You stopped a war." She looked up at him, the adrenaline fading into grim reality. "This is your life. Every day, this constant brink." "Yes," he said, "no sugarcoating, no pretty lies. This is what loving me means, and if you can't live like this, I will understand. I will let you go and spend the rest of my life making sure you're safe." The confession hung between them, more vulnerable than any "I love you." "You love me?" she repeated, the words taking shape in the air. "Since the first time you refused to be afraid of me." Christina thought of every time she'd been told she was too much. She looked at this man, who had seen her at her most violent and called her magnificent. He was offering her an out, but he was also offering her a truth. She was exactly enough for the life she was meant to have. Before she could answer, Mrs. Lim cleared her throat. "About time," she said, a real smile breaking through. "Now, get out of my café. I have to clean up this mess." Outside, the first fireworks of the new year painted the sky. The world was celebrating, oblivious. In the quiet aftermath, he made her two promises. One was of love. The other was of a future so different from his past, it would change everything. But that future would demand one final public transformation, and it would begin with a simple question, asked not in the heat of battle, but in the clear light of a new day.
6 months later, Christina Wells stood before a newly renovated building in the heart of Koreatown. The sign above the door, etched in both English and Korean, read, "The Second Chance Initiative." It wasn't a fortress, it was a community center, a medical clinic, a job training hub. The air smelled of fresh paint and hope, not coffee and concealed weapons. Park Hai Jong came up behind her, his arms circling her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. No suit today, just simple, elegant clothes. "Well," he asked, "does it meet the head consultant's approval?" She leaned back into him, watching former gang members in clean polo shirts guide newcomers through the doors. She saw her own clinic, where she practiced integrated medicine, where healing was the only objective. "I love it," she whispered, emotion thick in her throat. "6 months ago, I was hiding from my own life. Now, we built this." "You built this," he corrected softly. "Your vision, your expertise, your relentless, beautiful insistence that power should build things, not just break them. I just funded it and persuaded the right people to get out of the way." He had. The transition wasn't a fairy tale. It was a brutal, strategic dismantling. Legitimate businesses were expanded. Illicit operations were shut down or transformed. There were threats, power struggles, nights of terrifying tension. But the man who once ruled through fear was now learning to lead through something far more potent: integrity. He turned her to face him, his expression shifting into something nervous, utterly unguarded.
Speaking of 6 months ago, you gave me a deadline to prove I was more than just a man good in a crisis. Christina's heart stuttered. Park? He dropped to one knee on the sun-warmed pavement. From his pocket, he produced a ring, a simple, stunning band with a single diamond. Not flashy, just undeniable, like her. I've attended 73 board meetings without threatening a single person, he began, a faint smile on his lips. I've donated $4 million to charities you picked. I've turned 90% of my operations into ventures that actually help people. His voice grew more serious, his eyes holding hers. And every single day, I've woken up grateful that a heartbroken waitress walked into my café and saw the man I could be, not just the monster I was. You forgot the part where you started a fashion line because you got bored at a gala, she said, tears blurring her vision. The hemlines were tragic, he grinned, then sobered. I'm still a work in progress, but Christina, you make me want to be better. You make me believe it's possible. So marry me, build this life with me, grow old with me in a world we make safer, kinder, together. Say yes. The small crowd, staff from the center, Mrs. Lim, Christina's best friend Nia, even a few of Park's most trusted, now reformed lieutenants had gathered, holding their breath. Christina looked from the ring to his face, the face of the dangerous man who had chosen peace for her, for them, for this city. She thought of the waitress with the needles, the woman everyone misunderstood, and saw her perfect, powerful reflection in his eyes. Yes, she said, pulling him up and kissing him as the crowd erupted. Yes, you ridiculous, reformed crime lord. I'll marry you.
Before we see the final chapter of their story, I have to take a moment to thank you. Crafting these deep cinematic narratives where characters transform and secrets unfold layer by layer is our passion. If you love getting lost in these fully realized worlds, the best way to support this channel and ensure we can keep making them is by subscribing to Smoot. You'll get access to deeper dives, exclusive content, and you'll be the reason stories like this can continue. It means the world to us. Now for the final scene. Their wedding was held, of course, at the Nightingale Café. Mrs. Lim, who had gotten officially ordained, officiated. Christina's gown wove together Korean hanbok silks with African print patterns designed by her grandmother. Park's pocket square was cut from the same cloth. They exchanged vows not in a church, but surrounded by the scars and soul of the place where they had almost died, and where they had truly begun to live. Christina promised to always tell him the truth, to stand beside him as he built, and to use her needles only for healing, except when absolutely necessary. Park Hai Jong promised to never ask her to make herself smaller, to honor her strength as his equal, and to love her with a fierceness that would always, always be a refuge. They kissed as husband and wife, and outside, fireworks lit up the sky, a private display he'd arranged because their love story, after all, had begun with an explosion. Much later, in their shared home that finally felt like one, Christina traced the dragon tattoo on her husband's neck. I stopped 30 assassins with a single needle, she mused. I fell in love with the most dangerous man in LA, and somehow this is my life. Regrets? He murmured, his arms tight around her. Not a single one. She kissed him softly. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you, he whispered back, for being brave enough to love the man I became for you. They fell asleep tangled together, two broken pieces from different worlds who had collided in a shower of sparks and pain, and in the aftermath forged something entirely new. Not just a love story, a legacy. And somewhere in Koreatown, Mrs. Lim smiled as she wiped down the counters of her quiet cafe. The door chimed. Another lost soul walked in, eyes haunted, heart in pieces. She poured a glass of the good soju and slid into the booth. Another story was beginning, and she would be there to witness it, just like always.